With Avengers: Infinity War, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is heading towards a conflict that's been building for nearly a decade. Thanos has been on a collision course with the rest of the heroes since 2012's Avengers, and he's finally taking center stage in a battle for the Infinity Stones. The war will unite an entire universe of superheroes, but it will also likely have lethal consequences. Given the stakes involved and the Mad Titan's status as the ultimate bad guy of the Marvel movies, the question isn't if one of the heroes won't make it out alive, but which one.
I hope they remember you.
Let's take a look at the cast of Infinity War to come up with our best betting odds on which heroes might not make it to the closing credits. Watch out for potential spoilers as we figure out who's going to meet their maker. And we don't mean Stan Lee.
Are you Tony's stank?
Black Panther. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has doled out more than its share of jaw-dropping surprises over the last decade, and the studio's brain trust has proven itself more than willing to take bold creative risks with the franchise's storytelling. But Marvel Studios also has to consider its bottom line, and since Black Panther just became one of the highest-grossing superhero movies of all time, there's no way the executives are going to let him get away that easily. Forget about his vibranium stockpile. Pulling in that much money at the theater is what really makes T'Challa bulletproof. There's just no way Wakanda's king isn't one of the heroes left standing once Infinity War is over. Odds 1.239 billion and counting to 1. Spider-Man. Also far too promising for dismantlement right now is Spider-Man. Granted, Peter Parker is going to be completely outmatched against Thanos and seems to be primed to suffer some serious punishment in the movie. But with a second Spider-Man Homecoming movie due in theaters next year, the chances of him being truly taken out by Thanos seem slim. He's just way too new and too popular to meet his end just yet.
You're that Spider guy on YouTube, right? Call me Spider-Man! Okay, Spider-Man! Don't flip! Yeah!
Odds 100 to 1. Gamora. She's the deadliest woman in the galaxy, and she's got a major grudge against Thanos, who basically stole her from her home planet and tortured her adopted sister. Gamora might have been Thanos' favorite daughter growing up, but she doesn't seem to have much love for the Mad Titan now. It seems more likely that she'd be the one to take down Thanos than that he'd ever get to lay his purple hands on her. After all, she learned from him. Odds 75 to 1. Black Widow. Fans have been clamoring for Black Widow to get a solo movie since she first kicked her way onto the screen in Iron Man 2, so getting rid of her before we actually get to see her stand alone seems like a catastrophically bad idea. That said, Natasha Romanoff's fate during the Infinity War saga could go either way. If it's her backstory that people really want to see, it doesn't matter much that she survives in the current timeline, right? With Hulk, Captain America, and the Black Panther at her side though, she's probably still got a good shot of hanging in there this time. Odds 50 to 1. Hulk. On one level, Hulk is arguably the easiest character to get rid of in Infinity War. He hasn't had a solo movie since 2008's Incredible Hulk, and he's kind of a liability for the Avengers anyway. With Marvel seeming pretty uninterested in giving the Hulk a solo spotlight, there's a strong possibility that his part in the franchise might be coming to an end. It's also worth noting that Mark Ruffalo revealed that the plan has been to give the Hulk an arc that would begin in Thor Ragnarok and continue through the two Infinity War movies. In Ragnarok, Bruce became the Hulk for years at a time, which allowed the Green Guy to run the show without Banner's knowledge or approval. It's easy to see how that loss of control might not work out so well for him then, isn't it? Odds 20 to 1. Thor. Thor Ragnarok was funny, but it also put Thor through the ringer. His hammer was shattered, he lost an eye, and his homeland of Asgard was destroyed, leaving him exiled in outer space. If the plan is for things to keep getting worse for the Odin son, then there's really not a whole lot left to do with him but plant him under a tombstone. But with so much coming down on him in his own movie, Thor seems to be gaining strength. He's now able to channel his supernatural gifts, and he's expected to get a new hammer in Infinity War, called the Stormbreaker. So it seems just as likely that the God of Thunder's luck will turn around in the film as it does that he'll keep getting trounced by baddies, or himself.
That's what.
Odds 15 to 1. Drax. Of all the Guardians of the Galaxy, Drax seems like he might be the most likely choice for the chopping block. In the comics, his entire reason for living is to execute Thanos. Since the movie version tends to launch himself into battle without thinking of any consequences, his fast fury could lead to a toe-to-toe fight, with the deadliest being the Marvel Universe has to offer. If that is in fact what happens, it's pretty hard to imagine Drax coming out as the winner. At the same time, Dave Bautista's performance in the Guardians movies have made him a fan favorite, so the question is whether the shock value of having him take one for the team is enough to outweigh the benefits of keeping him around. Odds 12 to 1. Hawkeye. Even before he was curiously absent from the film's character-heavy poster, Hawkeye hasn't been the most obvious priority for Marvel Studios, and his arc reflects that. He's retired, gotten bored enough to join Captain America's illegal strike force, and been imprisoned as a war criminal by Iron Man. Those are all pretty good signs that the Marvel Cinematic Universe doesn't have much left to do with the Archer, beyond giving him a noble death to let everyone else know the stakes in the war against Thanos. Let's be real for a second though. If they did kill off Hawkeye in Infinity War, would you actually even notice? Odds 10 to 1. Star-Lord. Another hero who seems unlikely to die at the hands of the Mad Titan is Peter Quill.
What the?
After all, he's already survived a couple of cosmic threats before, so what's one more? Plus, Chris Pratt's comedic chops have set the tone that the Guardians movies are built on, and that seems to be carrying through to Infinity War as well.
I think it's good, except it sucks. So let me do the plan.
On the other hand, Star-Lord's death would be a huge shock, which might mean it'd be worth it just for the sake of keeping audiences on their toes. Besides, he's half-living planet, and as we all saw in Guardians 2, it takes more than a couple of blaster bolts to the head to take one of them out permanently. Nobody ever said these characters have to stay dead to make it onto Thanos' kill count for this film. Odds 10 to 1. Doctor Strange. As the Sorcerer Supreme, Doctor Strange is the only one who's faced the kind of celestial threat Thanos represents, taking on Dormammu by himself and coming away with a victory. With that kind of win on his record, it seems likely that Strange's formal introduction to the Avengers could be the thing that tips odds in their favor.
Who's laughing now?
But his future in the MCU is questionable at the moment, since even Benedict Cumberbatch doesn't seem to know whether Doctor Strange 2 is gonna actually happen. The filmmakers did already set up Baron Mordo as a villain for his next outing, but we'll have to wait and see whether that pays off, or if the Mystic meets his end in the Infinity War instead. Odds 8 to 1. Vision. He saved the day in Age of Ultron, but since then, the Vision's had a pretty hard time fitting into his role as an Avenger. In Civil War, he couldn't even stop Hawkeye and Scarlet Witch from walking out of a room, and a misfired laser beam wound up permanently injuring War Machine, one of his own teammates. With that kind of track record, it's tough to imagine him lasting long in a fight against Thanos. Moreover, Vision has one of the Infinity Stones mounted on his forehead, and from the film's previews, it looks like Thanos' minion Corvus Glaive might just get to him before it's all said and done. Suffice it to say, things aren't looking good for the Avengers' resident synthezoid. Odds 5 to 1. Nebula. It's no secret that Infinity War is drawing pretty heavily from the events of 1991's Infinity Gauntlet storyline, and in that story, Thanos keeps Nebula suspended just on the verge of death as a form of torture to amuse himself. The twist is that Nebula is ultimately able to get control of the Infinity Stones herself, which sets into motion Thanos' defeat. Since Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 spent so much time patching up Nebula's relationship with Gamora and establishing that Thanos is no stranger to mutilating her just for kicks, having Thanos target his renegade daughter would be an easy way to show moviegoers how ruthless he can be. Or she could end up being one of the people who helps take him down in the end, as it was written. We'll have to wait and see. Odds 5 to 1. Captain America. Steve Rogers is easily the most beloved of the Avengers, so if the film's producers really want to hit the audiences with the gut punch, killing off Captain America would do it. What better way to reunite the Avengers after the events of Civil War than having them rally around his heroic sacrifice? The previews certainly seem to be setting the tone for a tough fight between Cap and Thanos, and Chris Evans himself has confirmed that he intends to retire from blockbuster movies in favor of smaller films. It hardly seems like a coincidence that Steve Rogers has not one, but two characters that could take up a shield if he falls in battle: Falcon and Bucky Barnes. Evans has mentioned that he's still set to appear in the movie that comes after Infinity War, but there's nothing that says that appearance won't be in a flashback or a coffin. Odds 3 to 1. Iron Man, Tony Stark. We don't know for sure, of course, but it looks like Tony Stark is not going to survive this movie.
Wow.
It might actually be the only logical conclusion to a character arc that's been building since 2008. Over the past few movies, Tony's fears about the changing world and his efforts to get ahead of the disasters that come from a world full of superheroes and villains have gone increasingly off the rails. His attempt to create artificial intelligence unleashed Ultron and resulted in the complete destruction of Sokovia, which in turn led directly to the Avengers themselves being destroyed as a team during the events of Civil War. Even his most recent protege, Peter Parker, was defined by his choice to reject the path that Tony took as Iron Man. With a conflict that's bigger and more far-reaching than anything he's dealt with before, the consequences are going to be just as huge. And for Tony, that likely means a heroic sacrifice. There's a certain poetry to it. Iron Man was the movie that kicked off the MCU in 2008, and what better way to mark the 10th anniversary of the cinematic universe than by killing off its founding character? It'd be bittersweet, of course, but it'd be the best farewell Iron Man could hope for to sacrifice himself for the sake of the planet and the universe at large.
Tell me his name again.
Odds 3-2. In other words, rest in peace, Iron Man. Thanks for watching. Click the looper icon to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Plus, check out all this cool stuff we know you'll love too.